legends, certainly these people would be a bit more heroic. I mean, you sort of think of the Hall of Fame, the our best possible people in the history of the people of God. Everybody has stink on them. David murdered a man after he probably didn't just, in fact, I was reading an article on this just the other day, that the right language to ascribe to David with Bathsheba isn't an adulterer, but more a sexual predator. Because, obviously he is king of Israel and a man endowed with an extraordinary authority. And she knew that she was married. He knew that she was married. And he commanded that this should be so anyway.
But he was king, and in that day and age, he could do what he pleased.
Yeah, and so, you start to paint Bathsheba as though she was a consenting party in this little drama. And even if she could verbalize a kind of notion of consent, was she really in a position at any time to say no? And that tells you all you need to know about that. This is not just an ordinary whoopsie-daisy kind of affair. This is predatory. It's awfully bad. And that's before you even begin to think about the fact that David was complicit in getting Uriah killed, and that we usually describe that as murder.
But in a way, aren't we ascribing the morals that we know of today against the morals that they knew of then?
Yeah, well, certainly those sins were pretty big high crimes and misdemeanors, because Nathan the prophet came in and said,
"You did it.
You did it. You're the bad guy." Yeah. And but we did this in another class. We were talking about in the course on mercy that I taught a few weeks back with another class. We were talking about Abraham. Again, you think, oh wow, Abraham, if there's ever a hero, an emblem of faith, Abraham's the guy. And look at what he did. He left Ur of the Chaldees, he traveled all the way to the promised land, and he received the promises of God, and he was so faithful at the end, he was even willing to plunge a knife in his beloved son's chest because he had some confidence that God could even raise Isaac from the dead. Oh wow, what a hero. Well, that's only if you overlook the second part of chapter 12 of Genesis. And there's a famine in the land, and rather than believing that God could preserve his life through the famine, Abraham chickens out and runs down to Egypt. And because he's afraid of the Egyptians killing him, he starts to lend his wife out. The word is a pimp at that point, to the Egyptians, and eventually Sarah, his wife, is taken into the harem of Pharaoh. And as a result, Pharaoh's house is visited with plagues. And you have this very, very unusual situation at the end of this where, we always think of Pharaoh as the bad guy in the Hebrew Bible. But now Pharaoh is the aggrieved party, and he's interrogating Abraham, saying, "What have I done to you that you would visit me with this disaster? Get your stuff, take your wife, and get out of here." And so Abraham, what a great guy, except for that. And that's not the first time, it is the first time, but it's not the only time that would happen in Abraham's life. And it's all to say that the only hero that gets away without any stink is, in the Old Testament, is Yahweh, is God. And the only hero that gets away without any stink on him in the New Testament is Jesus. Because, our first pope denied Jesus 3 times. And then finked out on St. Paul in Galatians too, and all of these disciples that we venerate as the College of the Apostles.
Don't you think that a lot of this just refers to David because he's of such mythic proportions?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like in our country, we always refer to Lincoln.
Yeah.
Well, Lincoln might have been a jerk for all we know,
Absolutely.
but he has this persona.
Yeah. No, and there is something to that, and I think it sort of lends to your comment that David, becomes sort of and your connection with Lincoln actually is really wonderful. One of the things, I'm a historical theologian by training, and so I love my theology, and I'll take Bible and theology all day and do nothing else. But because I've been historically trained as well, historical stuff matters to me. And one of the things that just drives me nuts on the internet is I'll be reading my Facebook feed and somebody will post a comment or a quote from Abraham Lincoln. And it'll be like, boy, that's interesting. That's an unusual thing for Lincoln to have said in the 19th century. And you start searching for the quote, searching for the attribution. And it's, everybody's footnoting like some random internet article that somebody wrote, as a popular thing. And come to think of it, that there's Lincoln never did say that. The other one, we do this in the church all the time. It's a great preacher's line, but it's absolutely untrue. The line that preach the gospel at all times, and if you absolutely have to say something, everybody says, "Oh, that's Francis of Assisi." Absolutely, Saint Francis, yeah. And actually, I happened to go to my alma mater is St. Louis University, and there were 3 medieval scholars, and they were all experts in Francis and Bonaventure, and they actually said, no, Francis actually never did say that. Francis said a few things like that, but never said that exact thing. But we attribute things to Lincoln or things to Francis, and it's not as though somebody's lying exactly.
It's kind of like the game of Secret, where you whisper a secret in, and it comes around and it's totally different from what the first person was
We've
saying.
idealized them.
Yeah, and so we're not really lying. What we're doing is we are endowing a quote with a certain gravity. I mean, if I said it, who cares if I said it? But man, if Martin Luther King Jr. or Gandhi or St. Francis or Abraham Lincoln or C.S. Lewis, any of those people said it, wow, all of a sudden that's deep stuff, right? And so there is a possibility that we have something like this. So let's look at how this attribution kind of goes here. Let me pull this over here real quick. We'll take on some of the authorship question here. This is what it looks like in Hebrew. I think that's right. When you open it up in Hebrew, when it says a Psalm of David, it's Le David. David is the noun, and then the le here is a preposition. Now, one of the things that is both the blessing and the curse of Hebrew is that it's very hard to learn the vocabulary, but grammar is super easy. English grammar is terrible because for every grammatical rule we have 10 instances where we break the rule. Hebrew doesn't break any of its own rules because there are so few rules. And so what you end up having to do is rely a lot on context to make sense of what is actually being said. So this could be since we're reading it right to left, this would be by David, of David, about David. There are a couple others. There can be for David, or as I said, that you can sort of make an adjective out of this whole phrase and just say Davidic. And the reason why is this is one letter in the Hebrew Bible and it's a preposition. So what is being said here? Is it by David, of David, about David, for David? Or is it Davidic? It's really tough to know, and that is also true of the other authors. There are 12 times that it is of, to, for, about Asaph. There are the sons of Korah are listed as authors 11 times. King Solomon, David's son, is of Solomon or to Solomon or about Solomon twice. Jeduthun, Jeduthun, if you're spelling that out for notes, is listed 4 times. And then the last is Heman, Etan, and Moses. All 3 of those guys get 1 attribution apiece in that. So, what do we do with these? Well, if we, the big thing is that we don't have any manuscript evidence that the Psalms ever lacked their titles in Hebrew. Okay, that doesn't say much because the Hebrew manuscripts that we have are comparatively recent. So that leaves some ambiguity. But if you look at Syriac manuscripts, which is a separate set of traditions, these are the Psalms composed not in Hebrew but in another ancient Near Eastern language, Syriac. It says that they rejected these attributions and actually substituted new ones. So we've got this whole set of manuscripts that they all have the titles, but they've been changed. So it seems that at least one strand of scribes felt perfectly free to alter them at will. We also have some idea that they're pretty late, that the Psalms, because of their developmental proclivity, it seems that they weren't actually original to the document. So what do we do? Do we think of these things as authorship? Well, let's make a case for David to begin. There are a few reasons. The l there. Semitic prepositions have a wide semantic field. As I said, this could be any of these. But there are some fundamental reasons why we might keep David. The biblical tradition itself surrounding David's interest and involvement with music in worship is pretty significant. Would one of you be willing to read a little bit of an extended passage? It's 1 Samuel 16. Verses 14 through 23.
What was the verses again?
It's beginning at 14 and read down through verse 23.
1 Samuel, what chapter?
16.
16?
Yeah.
Alan,
Go ahead.
14 14 through which one?
Through 23.
Through 23. The Spirit of the Lord had departed from